Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to my Bracketology version 8.0. There will certainly be another, probably 9.0. Maybe I'll get to 10.0, who knows, but probably at least one more Bracketology just updating the conference tournaments on maybe Friday or Saturday, considering today is Tuesday. But we're going to start like we always do with the bracket matrix. We do have three basically confirmed number one seeds. It is Purdue, UConn, and Houston. No matter what happens to those teams, they will be one seeds. But very interesting, the final one seed is heavily disputed right now between Tennessee and North Carolina. Arizona, with the loss to USC, seemingly is a consensus too. At least at this point in time, Tennessee, big SEC tournament. North Carolina, big ACC tournament. How those teams perform in those conference tournaments will determine the final one seed, considering when you look at their average seed line, 1.45, 1.55, very close. We're splitting hairs. We will see who plays better. The SEC certainly this year, you could argue, is better than the ACC with more quality teams. I think the SEC is probably 6 deep, maybe 7 if you want to include A&M. They don't have a lot of defense, but still, Tennessee, if they go on a deep run, I think they will lock up that fourth and final one seed. North Carolina did just beat Duke, though. Very impressive win. We'll see how they do in the ACC tournament. You can see Arizona, very likely a consensus 2 seed, although you could get both Tennessee and North Carolina losing early, Arizona taking advantage of a weak Pac-12, winning the Pac-12 and then catapulting to be a 1 seed. I could still see that. Marquette, very likely at this point, not a locked 2 seed, but a very likely 2 seed. Iowa State also a probable 2 seed, even with the end of the season loss. Although if they lose in the first round, they will very likely drop to a 3. Right now, the 3 line is Creighton, Baylor, Duke, and Kansas. So Kansas, even with their terrible performance this year in the regular season, I mean, it's not a terrible performance, I guess, by their standard, considering they're like a 6 seed in the Big 12 tournament. They're still on the 3 line. Kentucky catapulting to a 4 seed. Going to be a very interesting team to predict in the tournament, considering the bad defense combined with the amazing offense and the NBA level talent that they do have. Also Illinois, both Kentucky and Illinois. I've really liked Illinois recently. They could be a dark horse number 4 seed to go to the Final Four. You do also have Alabama along with Auburn. Auburn is loved analytically. Alabama, I think, has a high floor because of their offensive potency. They're not going to be susceptible to an upset against a lower seed, but they're also going to have huge problems beating teams that are better than them because of their terrible defense. Moving on to 5 seeds, you do have BYU in a 5v12 matchup, South Carolina, Clemson, and San Diego State. So yeah, I would say South Carolina, Clemson, San Diego State, all teams I would think of possibly having lose to a 12 seed. Now, I wouldn't predict 3 5 seeds to lose. I mean, it could happen. It's March Madness. But I could predict maybe 2 12 over 5s, at least 1 12 over 5. I like BYU holding serve against a 12 seed. I guess it depends who they're matched up with. But those other 3 5 seeds, I think, are susceptible to upsets. Utah State, I think, is susceptible to an upset as well. Wisconsin, Washington State, and Texas Tech. I like Texas Tech the most out of all of those teams. Wisconsin, they've been kind of decent in the tournament, utilize defense, play lower scoring games. Although this year they're actually better analytically offense. They're just kind of a slower tempo. Moving on to the 7 line, how about Dayton, the fall that they've had? They're on to the 7 line now. You do also have Nevada. It's funny, the Mountain West, it's just all these teams are the exact same. They're all 6, 7, 8 seeds. You know, they all have like the same record. It's just such a mosh pit in the Mountain West. One team is going to come out of the Mountain West and make a run to the Elite 8. All the others are going to lose in the first round. I'm convinced of that. You do also have Gonzaga trending up now. Remember when Gonzaga was on the bubble? There was talk about Gonzaga possibly not being in. They're a clear 7 now. And Florida, they had a really bad loss last game of the season, or else they'd probably be on the 6 line. They are the final 7. The thing is, if you're a 1 seed, you really want to avoid Florida being an 8 or a 9 seed because they have upset potential over a 1 seed in the second round. Looks like they could be facing a 2 seed in the second round if they get a 7v10 game. Florida's extremely inconsistent. They could lose in the first round, but they could also go on a very deep tournament run. St. Mary's, kind of a similar spot Gonzaga is in As an 8 seed, you do have Boise State, Texas, and Northwestern. Those teams involved in 8v9 games: Colorado State, Nebraska, Oklahoma, FAU. The 10 line is TCU, Michigan State. A lot of people think Michigan State should miss the tournament. It's not going to happen. Their analytics are too good. Mississippi State and Seton Hall clearly in the tournament at this point in every single bracket in this updated version. Wow. You do have Virginia in over 90% of brackets, Colorado appearing in a ton of them, possibly playing in the first four. St. John's clearly in the tournament. Drake getting that auto bid from the Missouri Valley. They're an 11 seed. Indiana State, I think they're going to be in. Based on their analytics, based on their net, I believe they will be in the tournament. They had a close loss to Drake, although I will say Drake was controlling that game. Indiana State came back late. Overall, I think Indiana State and Drake probably seated right, maybe on the 11 line. The problem for Indiana State, they're very likely to be involved in a first four game now. You do also have Richmond in as well as an 11 seed. The 12 line, it is Princeton, Grand Canyon, James Madison. Congratulations are in order to them. They win the Sun Belt. And how about the narrative surrounding James Madison, a team that nobody really talked about? Everyone was on Appalachian State. Analytics loved App State. And now James Madison is sitting there with like a 31-3 record, and we could see a boatload of people pick James Madison on a huge Cinderella run. They've kind of got the same vibe as Florida Atlantic. I'm not saying people are going to, make them go to the Final Four, but I could see a lot of brackets with James Madison in the Elite Eight, and also South Florida. So South Florida, based on their analytics, they have to win the American. They just do not have good enough analytics to make it as an at-large at this point, in my opinion. I believe they are the 1 seed in the American, but you also have other teams in that conference, like a Florida Atlantic. Could be tough for them to win that conference tournament. The 13 line, it is McNeese, Samford, UC Irvine, and Vermont. So very similar 13 seeds. We always see the same ones. The 14 line, it is Charleston, Toledo, Oakland, Morehead State. The 15 line, Colgate, Sam Houston State bumped up. You also do have Montana now, possibly from the Big Sky, and also South Dakota State. The 16 line is Quinnipiac, Longwood, congratulations to them. Stenson, congratulations. Norfolk State, Merrimack, and Grambling, the final 16 seed in the tournament. The teams on the bubble, the first four out would be New Mexico, the first team to miss the tournament, appearing in 63% of brackets as an 11 seed. All these teams would very likely be in the first four games, obviously, unless they win multiple games in their conference tournaments. Villanova, you do also have Texas A&M appearing in 36 brackets. They're getting some traction. Wake Forest, minimal amount of brackets. Pittsburgh, Providence, Iowa, and Ohio State getting very little love. Iowa faces Ohio State. The winner of that game is very likely going to have to also beat Illinois. Going to be hard to do to make the tournament. And then you can see below that these are just other auto qualifiers, meaning, certain people have different opinions on who's going to win the mid-major conference tournaments. Some people think Cornell. I guess just one person thinks Cornell. Loyola Chicago. I will agree, Loyola Chicago, out of the A-10, they've had a nice second half of the year. Louisiana Tech, of course, you would think they were a team that was mocked in the tournament forever. You do also have Akron, people liking Akron, as well as Southern down there, and Fairfield. I do like Fairfield over Quinnipiac, I guess. We will see. Moving on to the total bubble right now, and then I'm going to look at the updated Lunardi bracket. Who do I like, who do I not like based on the draws off of that bracket. But the bubble, I think Michigan State is in for sure. You look at the quality metric, they're green and everything. I'd be shocked if they missed. I guess Villanova is as well, but Michigan State to me, like, the thing that people have to understand, I know people, you look at what they've done recently, the record isn't the greatest, but even if you want to put it in perspective, they beat Indiana State earlier this year. And you've got all these people, ready to burn a house down because Indiana State won't win. Well, Michigan State beat them. And I know Michigan State, you don't like them because they're this big school and they've lost a few games, but I still think they're going to be in. And they're going to be an annoying, I don't want them to be in. They're going to be a very annoying team to predict in the tournament. They could make a deep run or they could lose in the first round. That's just what Michigan State is at this point. At least they're not going to be involved in the first four, I guess. You do have Colorado as an 11 seed. New Mexico, first four out, but the analytics and the net loves them. You can see Indiana State 29 in terms of the net. They're a possible 11 seed. Villanova, first four out. They're right on the door. Colorado State in as a 9 seed. You do also have Wake Forest. This is according to the net, so these are rated via the net. But you can just see all the teams that still do slightly have a chance. I mean, obviously TCU's in right now as a 10 seed, but Cincinnati, outside looking in, victim of their tough conference. They're 40th in the net. Mississippi State is in as a 10 seed. Pittsburgh's on the outside looking in. A&M next 4 out. Northwestern is hated by the analytics, but they're an 8 seed. Virginia is in. Yeah, Northwestern's really not on the bubble. And then you've got Utah, Ohio State, Ohio State and Iowa, both in the next 4 out category. How about Seton Hall, a 10 seed, down number 62 in terms of the net? And also Richmond way down there at number 71, but they're in the tournament as well. So Ohio State, Iowa, going to be teams to watch. Villanova, another big team to watch. New Mexico, what can they do in that mosh pit that is the Mountain West? I find it hard to believe they're really going to put together multiple wins in a conference tournament like that where every team is evenly matched. And then also other teams that could potentially have a chance. Providence is not really within shouting distance, but maybe as a next 4 out. Maybe there's a viable path. Wake Forest needs to win a few games in the ACC, have a big upset to possibly make it after their late season struggles. And then moving on to the official updated bracket, or actually I'm not sure when this was updated, but this is the current bracket I'm using, the most recent one. Purdue, the number 1 seed in Indianapolis, their draw with Texas or Florida Atlantic, not great. Certainly they could beat either one of those teams. Those teams have high upside though, Texas and Florida Atlantic. Kind of annoying to face, but I would still probably have Purdue. I'm liking Purdue to make a nice run to at least the Elite Eight. I don't think Zach Edey goes out like this. You've also got Nevada and Richmond in the 5v12 game. I like Nevada there. Auburn, Charleston. Auburn could have a nice run in this bracket. Washington State, James Madison. Iowa State, the 3 seed versus Oakland. I mean, I do not like Iowa State going into the tournament, but I do think that's a good draw. If you're a 3 seed and the 6 seed is Washington State, nothing against Washington State. Number one, I think a lot of people would pick James Madison to beat Washington State, and then maybe I would pick James Madison to beat Iowa State in the second round. I don't think Iowa State would lose to Oakland, but who knows. Florida, the 7 seed against Michigan State, that's a fun matchup. Actually, it's not a fun matchup, but it's kind of an annoying matchup to predict just because they're both high upside teams. I'd probably have Florida winning that game, and then Marquette taking on Quinnipiac. That's not a fun... If you're Marquette, you would not want to face either Florida or Michigan State in the second round. You would much rather, you take a look at the right side of the bracket, St. Mary's, TCU. You'd love to face a team like TCU in the second round. But looking at the Brooklyn region, you do have UConn taking on Longwood possibly in the first round. UConn's draw with Boise State or Nebraska, love it. That's a guaranteed trip for UConn to the Sweet 16. They get South Carolina as the 5 seed as well. Kansas is the 4. I like Kansas to come out of there, even though they've kind of had a tough year. Clemson, the 6th seed, possibly facing St. John's or Indiana State. That's why it's annoying, because Indiana State's now going to be involved in a first 4 game. Indiana State is a team that I really want to make a Cinderella, but that's so risky. A team in the first 4 where they might not even be in the final field of 64, predicting them to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. You almost want to... You're taking on a risk that's it's just not worth it, honestly. You have Kentucky up to a 3 seed in this bracket taking on Morehead State. North Carolina is the 2 seed. Maybe St. Mary's over North Carolina in the second round. It wouldn't shock me. And then moving on to the bottom of the bracket, you have Tennessee going out west as the final 1 seed. Dayton and Oklahoma, 8v9 games. That's a really good draw for Tennessee. Dayton is struggling. Oklahoma, I really have never been a fan of. I don't think they're going to pull off a crazy upset in the second round against a 1 seed. BYU, South Florida. Fun matchup there. I still might take South Florida, honestly, even after the loss. They would have to be an auto qualifier, though. Illinois and McNeese, yeah. I would like McNeese seeded elsewhere. I would like McNeese seeded against another 4 seed, but these 4 seeds look pretty... I'm not going to lie, these are pretty good 4 seeds, just looking at it. If you have Auburn as a 4 seed, Kansas as a 4 seed, Illinois as a 4 seed, and Bama as a 4 seed, that is a strong 4 line with a lot of offensive firepower. Gonzaga and Mississippi State, I like Gonzaga there. Baylor, Toledo, you got to take Baylor. Utah State, Seton Hall, that's a toss-up. Arizona, Montana, I like Arizona to go deep this year. And moving on to the South, you do have Houston, possibly facing either Northwestern or Colorado State. I like Northwestern, the way they profile. I don't know if they could upset Houston, The concern with Houston is maybe a little bit slow team. They struggle to score sometimes. I don't know if you can really. I don't think I'm going to overthink it and have, Houston lose in the second round. San Diego State, Princeton, 5v12 game. I could see Princeton winning that one. Although Princeton won a game last year, actually won a few games. I don't know if I would trust them to do that again. Alabama, UC Irvine. I like UC Irvine a lot. The 13 seeds are going to get screwed in this bracket. The 4 line is very strong. Wisconsin taking on Colorado or Virginia. Yeah, I like Colorado to beat Virginia and then beat Wisconsin. Duke taking on Vermont. Vermont's an interesting team to watch. I don't think they would beat Duke, though. Texas Tech and Drake, and then you do have Creighton, the 2 seed. I could see Texas Tech beating Creighton in the second round there and advancing to the Sweet 16. And then taking a look at the best teams over the past 2 weeks. This is always a nice thing to look at because there's random teams on it, and I like seeing who's playing really well. This is just based off its 3 or 4 games. I guess 2 or 3 games in this case. But you can see UConn, the number 1 team, Houston. How about Creighton playing very well, the number 3 overall team. Texas A&M on the bubble, playing very elite. You've got Gonzaga, North Carolina, Auburn. Ohio State makes an appearance with a very good defense on this list. Duke, Illinois, Texas Tech, Grand Canyon at number 12. Pittsburgh, a team that was on the bubble, really helping themselves. Purdue and Arizona. That's a snapshot of the teams playing really well going into their conference tournaments. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.